All right, everyone, we will get started. Just want to let you all know that this is being recorded so I can post it later. Welcome to the FTC Volunteer Open House. I'm going to start really quickly by sharing a fun favorite video with everyone on volunteering with FIRST.
Come be a volunteer, help build tomorrow.
Volunteering that we do for FRC, best time of my life. It's awesome.
At FRC events, there were more than 120 people that are committed to making a difference for everyone involved.
It's so rare to find something you're volunteering that you're so passionate about. You only find that with FIRST.
I volunteer because I genuinely love what I do, and I love to inspire kids as much as I was inspired back when I was competing.
And you make amazing friends with these other volunteers. There's networking that happens. There's on-the-job training. There's a full gamut. There's no better way to spend a weekend.
Volunteering for FIRST is an amazing experience. As an alumni of the program, I get to experience all the new teams, all the parents, all the new students, and we always have a party with everyone here.
Come join the fun.
Is there anywhere else you'd rather be than a FIRST event? Come join the fun.
Come volunteer, help build tomorrow.
Gotta love that video because it does star a bunch of our key volunteers from Ontario. While that video is FRC focused, there are a lot of similar volunteer roles in FTC, and that's what we're here to learn about tonight. So tonight we have some of our key volunteers for FTC in Ontario. We have John Shaw, who is the regional judge advisor. We have Kate Walsh, who is the regional volunteer coordinator. We have, oh, yep, there's Kate. We have Jamie Sin, who is the regional FTA. We have Mickey Cornell, who is the regional head ref, and Michael Nucci, who is the regional robot inspector. Lead robot inspector. So we're going to go around and each of them are going to tell you a little bit about their role, what's involved, what are the prerequisites, how to get the role, and yeah, we're going to learn more today. So Michael, take it away.
I just had to find the unmute button there. So yeah, as Lisa said, I'm going to talk to you guys about robot inspection and lead robot inspection because they're essentially two sides of the same coin. So I'll start with inspection because lead robot inspection is just a sort of jump from there. So as an inspector, you essentially look at teams' robots and make sure it's safe and fair and within the rules. That is at its core what the role is. You're there to help the teams get the robots through inspection and onto the playing field and having fun and not breaking things. That's at its core, that's it. So how do you do this? Within FTC, we do it a bit differently than other programs at this point. So typically with FTC, you have your robot inspector, your field inspector, and there's CSAing, which is another thing entirely, which I'll get to in a minute. And we've kind of jammed all three of them together into one role because, you know, that's kind of how we like to do things around here. So with robot inspection, you're going through the physical parts of the robot, making sure that it is, oh, sorry, my Zoom here is just acting kind of funny on me. Make sure the robot meets all the robot inspection rules. So there's a checklist you go through and it meets all the physical requirements of being a robot and that everything is a legal part, just to make sure I didn't mispronounce that. And it can compete without having an unfair advantage. There's a big checklist you go through. You have a clipboard most of the time in person. Not the case this year because it's all remote. Big notice. Yeah, and then field inspection, you go through and make sure that the robot has all the proper connections to your driver station and the control system is all functioning as expected. A lot of just making sure that names are correct of every different port and it's all connecting up. When you look at the sheets, it makes a lot more sense to me just sort of babbling on about it. So I suggest looking at those if you are at all interested. As well with FTC in Ontario, we plan to do the Control Systems Advisors role, at least part of it. Part of it's split with the FTA, so Jamie will talk about it a bit later. But essentially just making sure teams have the assistance they need when something goes wrong with the control system, they can get help to fix it. So then I've told you what it is, some sort of prerequisites oh, that's just inspection. I need lead robot inspection too. Can't forget that. So lead robot inspectors essentially organize your inspectors and sort of keep the ball rolling through the event. And if there's uncertainty about the rules between the teams, and a regular inspector gets escalated to the lead robot inspector. And beyond that, the lead for Ontario robot inspector, and then up to first HQ, essentially. It's a big chain, you got to go all the way up if there's issues. So yeah, that's lead robot inspector. It's not all that different skill set than a robot inspector, just a bit more people managing skills. Speaking of people managing skills, as you may have guessed, in order to be robot inspector, you should have a decent baseline technical knowledge of sort of what a robot is, all the different components, how it all works together. You don't need to be an expert by any means, but a solid base understanding is a requirement. Speaking of people skills, as I alluded to earlier, you are talking to the teams a lot as a robot inspector. You're supposed to work with the teams to help them get through inspection. You're not looking to fail them, and they interact with you a fair amount right at the beginning of the event. So it's important that, you're on your best behavior and, you're nice to them, for lack of a better term. Let's see, what else do I got for you here? If you want to be a robot inspector, essentially it's sign up at an event. Remotely right now, teams inspect their own robots. So if you're on a team and you're looking at some robot inspector experience, it's really easy. You just print out the checklist and you inspect the robot. It's great. If you want to start inspecting once they're live events, you just talk to your local tournament organizer and the ball can get rolling for you on that. If, for example, you want to be a lead robot inspector, there is a bit of a process to go through. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but essentially you should have some experience as a robot inspector and then express your interest either to Lisa, myself, or the tournament director, and we'll start getting you trained up for that role. I think that's about all I got, I think, other than, remote events. One last thing, apologies, bit scatterbrained tonight. For remote events, how we help teams as inspectors for remote events, it's through two methods. My favorite thing to plug, the FRC team or Ontario First Team Support Slack. So if teams have questions, they'll either ask in the FTC channel or inspection, and you can go in, you can help them by answering questions. Also, everyone's encouraged to answer if you're in there. So I've seen a lot of teams answer questions already. As well, there is generally a submission form for teams if they want some help with inspection to submit pictures of their robot and some motor lists and pictures of their driver station and controller. That way, the robot inspector, up till now has been just me, goes through those pictures and sort of does a preliminary inspection and gives them a bit of feedback. You also get to help the teams out. For example, last year, I think I helped one team learn how to wire over email. So that was a venture and a half. But yeah, it's a good time. Highly recommend it. If you're interested, there's plenty of ways to get involved. Just drop us a line.
Speaking of if you're interested, right now I'm posting a link to a Google form in chat. If you are interested in any of the roles that we're talking about today or know anyone interested in any of the roles, please feel free to fill out this form or share it with those parties. And we'll talk more about the process of how we'll contact you and stuff like that near the end. But for now, if there's no questions for Michael, we will move on to Nikki.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nikki. I head referee for the region, and I guess lead the other head referees for the region. Like Michael said about inspecting and lead inspecting, there's like two sides of the same coin. So refereeing is where I would prefer most of my referees start. Learning how to learning how to head referee. So refereeing for FTC is kind of, there's two different hats that you have to wear. There's a scoring hat, and then there's like a rules enforcing hat. So scoring is watching a match and making sure that you like count every game element that the team scores or every time it's parked in the proper place. And it does those things properly such that those scores count. If they're done improperly, it doesn't count. So that is what one referee will do. And then the other referee is watching robot to robot interaction, making sure that there's no foul or no penalties. And if there is a penalty, if it is a major or minor one, they have to like wave the flag to indicate that there's a foul, or sorry, a penalty. And then they have to write that down on a sheet and make sure that they communicate to the team what that penalty is so that they can learn from it. So it's another type of mentoring in a way when you have to go and communicate to a team like, hey, like you got this penalty because of this. I also encourage referees to, if you see something close that could have been a penalty, to tell the team that so that they can learn from their experience and make sure that they maybe don't do that again, or find a different way to go about a problem they're trying to solve so that they don't incur penalties. And that's kind of the two things that referees do. And then what the head referee does is they make sure that all the calls that the referees make are correct. They manage the referees to make sure people get breaks on time, that rules are called consistently across different fields. So some events will sometimes have multiple fields, so they need to make sure that both fields are called the same way, as well as keeping things consistent within the region and within like all of the world competitions that are within FTC, and making sure that they're up to date on all of the rules and that the referees are up to date on all of the rules. The head referee is also responsible for drivers meetings, which is when the head referee will pick what are the rules that people seem to need reminders for, ones that you think are really tricky that could use like extra explanation, and answering questions. I often get very nervous about drivers meetings because sometimes they're just like a pop quiz of like, how well do you know the rules? But I find that students ask really challenging, good questions, and they're a great way to get a conversation going about the rules, which is great. So those are the like kind of head referee versus referee. The age requirements to be a head referee or a referee is 21. Or sorry, for a head referee is 21. And they, you need to be 3 years removed from as a student. So if you graduated when you were like, when you were 20, you can't actually head referee an event until 3 years past that. So even though you would meet the age requirement, you would need to also be removed from being a student on a team, which doesn't actually kind of work because there's age requirements on how you can be a student in FTC. So it's a really repetitive rule that isn't necessarily needed, but I'm just putting it out there. Yeah, so to referee, there's, with remote tournaments this year, there's no referee really, because teams are refereeing their own events. So that might be something we do in provincials, is have like things in person, but for right now, you get to experience being a referee for your team as a student, which is great. I hope you are interested in the role and come volunteer later. We do have head referees, and so the head referees right now are just a resource for teams, as Michael said, to make sure that they can ask questions and start a dialogue about rules and make sure that they're scoring things properly. We have our FTC like Slack channel to help and be a resource to teams. There will be drivers meetings for the tournaments that are happening. So there will be a head referee in that. The way you can volunteer to be a head referee is to fill out Lisa's form, and we can try to get you started as like trained to be a head referee if you don't have any referee experience. The end goal is that tournaments will be able to pick from a list of referees that they are more related to their event, so that they can fit the culture, as well as tournaments can nominate their own referee, maybe not to like referee that year, or to not head referee that year, but to be trained as a head referee so that event can have them in the future. So I think those are the big things. Yeah, so contact Lisa or I to referee or head referee, and also fill out that form.
Oh, I was muted. Awesome, Mickey. Thank you so much. Just like Mickey said, yeah, if you're interested in this role or know someone who is interested, please fill out this form. And if there are no questions for Mickey, we are going to move on to Jamie.
I have a very similar spiel to both Michael and Mickey. So quick role overview for the FTA for anyone who has been involved in FRC at all. It's a very similar role as the FRC FTA. You're responsible for the operation of the event in basically all technical matters. You are very often the first person to come into the event and very often the last person to leave. The operation of like throughout the event, you're ensuring that the scoring system works for in-person events, as well as maintaining the scorekeepers, as well as keeping a little bit of an eye on some of the CSA duties that touch your area, as well as interacting with the wireless environment, making sure that the wireless environment for the venue is perfectly good. There's no issues because FTC has a lot of wireless requirements similar to FRC, sorry. The variation that you have for an FTA versus FRC is that there's a little bit less stringent requirements for an FTC FTA versus an FRC FTA in terms of how you get into that role. But there is a limited availability for that role for the remote season, as we're basically glorified remote tech support. If you have a problem with your scoring system, congrats. Me or another FTA would be the ones answering your questions about that. But for an in-season event, you're doing a lot of the technical heavy lifting of an event. The prerequisites that we're going to have is a little bit different. Just like being a head referee, the age requirement is 21. So you will have to be at least 21 years old in order to serve as an FTA for a in-person season event. For remote, this year, we're not taking direct FTA assignments. We're going to be staffing that within the list that we already have, just to ensure that we don't have to worry about bringing people up to speed on how we want to handle things. And then we can take from a pool that the sign-up form that Lisa posted, as well as tournament directors that will be nominating their listed person that they would like. If you haven't already, which is the majority of tournaments, please do so, because believe me, you will need an FTA. I do not want to be going all the way up to Owen Sound. Sorry, Mike. The vast majority of time that you spend in this role will be one that's interacting directly on the field. You're not going to really leave the field area and like in the environment around it. So because of that, your interaction with the CSAs is a little bit less. The CSAs in your kind of way is a dispatch system. You basically say, hey, there's a problem with this robot in this match. This is roughly what happened. You radio over to the CSA and tell them all the issues. Then the CSA will follow that team back to the pit and troubleshoot with them in the pits. That's where Michael's interaction, handling the pit side, robot inspectors, will also help in or kick in there if needed. The kind of last little highlight of it, normally the process to become an FTA is following the FTAA path, where you're kind of helping out on the side with an FTA at an event. From that, your name would be put into a nomination list that First Canada would be reviewing and basically saying, hey, is this person ready? If they are ready, they would be taken aside for training along with any other FTAs for the season, and we kind of prep the entire environment for what the season is going to be. So you're going to have to worry about certain robot technical things with the control system. You're going to have to watch out for certain things with the scoring system. Have to be confident with the troubleshooting that an event does, and usually going to be setting up and tearing down the event as well. To touch on another role that's kind of tangential to the FTA is the field manager. It's very similar to the FRC field supervisor role, where you're responsible for the physical and mechanical integrity of the field, as well as its setup and compliance. So your setup and tear down, as well as field reset per match, will be managed by the field manager. The field manager has, I'm just trying to find the information reset for this. There we go. Also is required to be 21 years old. The process for that this year is a little bit more open. The lead field manager for Ontario, Kyle Lawton, is currently not here today, but because it is a fully remote season, the team is acting as their own field manager.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamie. And now we're going to move on to talking a little bit more about judging with John.
Thanks, Lisa. Hi, everybody. I'm John Shaw. I'm the Regional Lead Judge Advisor for Ontario. And I've been judging FTC, FLL, and FRC and been a judge advisor for a long time. I'm going to show some slides, not many. People know I like to use slides, and so it's not too many this time around. All I have to do is find the right one. There it is. Can people see that slide? Okay. So the basics in 4 slides, everything you need to know about judging, everything you need to know from the judge manual, 4 slides. That might be a bit of an exaggeration. Judges determine the winner of the judged awards as distinct from the awards for performance on the field. So judges are not involved with refereeing the game, looking at the rules, looking at the technical side on the field at all. In an in-person event, we will come and watch some of the matches to gain information about the teams and the robots. Judges work in pairs. Ideally, we'd have an experienced judge with a judge who may be new to the role. It doesn't always work out like that, especially in the first couple of years. So the judges get to meet with the teams, which is the best part of judging. The teams come to a Zoom interview room and they do a presentation for 5 minutes talking about the robot and also the team activities. And then the judges have 10 minutes to ask questions related to the awards. The hardest part is letting go at the end of the 10 minutes because the teams are usually they always have interesting things to say, and they're usually very impressive, and you want to keep talking to them, and you have to get on with your job. We use the award criteria and the information gained during the interview, discuss with the other judges, look at some written information, and then we rank the teams and make the awards decisions. All of that's coordinated by the key volunteer role, which is the judge advisor. The judge advisor, and that word is chosen very carefully. It is not the head judge. The judge advisor coordinates the discussions and ensures that the rules and processes that first is laid out are followed, but does not make a decision. The judges make the decision. There's a lot of volunteer roles. You may want to try one role at one event, a different role at another event. Judging is hard work and flat out just fun. You get to see the accomplishment of the teams up close with the team explaining them. I like the word inspired, prepare to be inspired. And that is actually the name, the title of the most prestigious award. So I'm an old engineer, and I really find talking with all these, I'll call them young engineers, is pretty much energizing for me. You don't have to be a technical wizard. There will always be some judges who are technical wizards. We make use of their knowledge. We can assign them to specific areas. But the key to all of that is if you don't understand something, just ask the team when you're talking to them. They'll explain it to you. And if they can explain it well, you know that team really learned what they were doing. Prepare to be humbled by having a 16-year-old explain something to you that maybe you didn't learn, maybe you've never learned. They do that to me just about every event. There's a strong emphasis on the team, the planning, the structure of the team, the activities of the team, other than just building the robot. First likes to say it's not all about the robot. And then there's also a strong emphasis on the process, the strategy, the design, the construction, and the documentation. So judges must be 21 years old. They must be at least 3 years removed from being a team member. And if the judge or the prospective judge is a mentor, that's okay, but they can't judge at an event where their team is competing. And that's a bit of a different rule in Ontario than FRC. The judge advisor, the same as the above, but they cannot be a mentor, and they must be at least 3 years removed from mentoring an FTC team. So you use the form to volunteer or contact the local tournament director or volunteer coordinator. Judges frequently go to more than one event, which just tells you that they get hooked. Is that can I use that word? I guess so. And if you have any questions, the Slack is there. There's a Slack judging channel, just like there is a general channel, et cetera, et cetera. I just posted something for a question. It might have been yesterday or it might have been the day before. And that's all you need to know about judging in 4 slides.
Thank you, John. That was awesome. And now for the role that brings all of these wonderful people together into one event, we have Kate to talk about what it's like to be a volunteer coordinator.
Hello, I bring all of the people together. So volunteer coordinator is a role that is more communication heavy. It's similar to judging, but you don't talk as much with teams, you talk more with the volunteers as you're the one coordinating with them. So in the role, you need to have documented or a history of being able to communicate and coordinate lots of people at an event. So in a remote event, you need to heavily communicate and coordinate with the judge advisor for a specific event, because judge advisors can, depending on their preference, handle recruitment and communication to judges, but it's their preference. So that's the heavy focus for a remote season, but also recruiting, making sure people are trained and feeling positive, running or proposing ideas like this for a specific event, as well as thinking a few years down the line in recruiting and training. So are the people that you have right now training the next round of roles for the event and for sustainability reasons? So that is in general some of the topics that you cover in a volunteer coordinator role. You, like all of the other roles, have to be 21 because this is a key role, but you also help to find areas where people who are younger or don't quite fit a category can train for a role or to have a role that fits within their age. The minimum age requirement for FTC volunteers in general is 13. So you can't be younger than that, but after that there is going to be a position for you anywhere. And it just may not be one of these key roles that we're specifically talking about today, but you can feel free to always ask us questions and we will have the answer for you. In terms of how to obtain a role, like a volunteer coordinator, like I said, you need a documented history of being able to communicate. If you are specific to a region, it helps that you know people and that you're able to network so that you have strong recruitment abilities. So those are some of the reasons or specific areas for the role and how to get it. That's, I think, the end of my spiel about this.
Awesome. Thank you, Kate. So along with networking and stuff, is there a certain place you would think like a volunteer coordinator would start when in the FTC in general? Like would you recommend that they do a specific role before or taste all the roles or?
So there's not a specific requirement that we set out for volunteer coordinating, but I personally would recommend that you volunteer in another communication heavy role. So a good example during an in-person event would be a role similar to pit admin, or that you come to say, hey, I'm really interested in this role, and say, here is where I communicate in my day-to-day life. So that is my example. Something that I personally found was helpful for another program is that you can shadow someone who has done the role. So that's a good example for any of these roles that you might want to, if you're not certain, someone who is a key volunteer may shadow to train you for a season before you take on the lead as that role.
Thank you. And actually, I'm going to pose that question to everyone else, starting with Nucci, because we're going to go in order. What if someone wanted to be a robot inspector or lead robot inspector? Well, I guess for lead robot inspector, you'd want them to start as inspector. If they want to be inspector, where would you recommend that they start?
Honestly, you can just start as an inspector. It's if you have experience with the team, that is a good starting point. With the lead robot inspector, or the lead robot inspector at each event should be able to help get you up to the point of learning how to inspect the robot without too much difficulty. So yeah, as long as you've got some baseline knowledge, start with robot inspector. If you don't have the baseline knowledge, maybe just ask to shadow a robot inspector for an event and get up to speed, then volunteer. But even so, yeah, just start more or less.
Cool. And I forget, but I'm pretty sure it's Mickey next. Mickey, for you, if someone want to be a head ref, they'd start as a ref, but to get to a ref, where would you recommend that they start?
I would say if you're nervous about like refereeing without any previous experience, start as a field reset. You are right by the field, you see what the referees and the head referee are doing, so you're more familiar with it. That being said, you can just jump in and learn and do just refereeing. However, you might have to backtrack and learn some of the field reset as you also learn refereeing. Because just like your referee is like one of the last people, or one of the the last people at the field. So it's like once the field resetters have reset things, then they go away and then the teams come on and put the robot on. But then sometimes things get out of place as the teams put the robots on the field. So that referee sometimes has to sneak in and adjust things. So if you want to start with refereeing, you can, but if you want like that interim little role, I would say field reset.
Gotcha, thank you. And Jamie, now to you, where would you even start to be an FTA? Well, you did say for an FTA, you'd start an FTAA. But what would you say is a good intro point for those roles?
Either inspector, field reset, or CSA would be good starting points for all of that. The reason is because you just want to be very comfortable with the robots, very comfortable in like the environment, troubleshooting, dealing with problems you haven't ever seen before and you're having to fix them in 5 minutes. Just the live troubleshooting issue would be really good for FTAs. And for field manager, doing field reset is the natural progression in. So nice, easy, low bar to very easy to access.
Awesome, thank you. And for John, I guess the judge advisor, ideally would start as a judge and be in that situation at least a few times, and then the starting point would be jump in and be a judge, right?
Yeah, the judge advisor should have judging experience. In the first couple of years in Ontario, we're suggesting that if you have really any kind of first experience where you understand first submission, you understand gracious professionalism, you understand the basics. For example, if you've been a first LEGO League judge or a first LEGO League judge advisor or an FRC, first robotics competition judge or judge advisor, those are really great. That's a really great background to have to be a judge or a judge advisor with FTC. We are this year, because we didn't have very many events, and we know we're going to have quite a few new people. So each event will have an experienced judge advisor assigned to the event, as well as the judge advisor for the event. So it becomes what we call shadowing, where the new judge advisor, they're involvement in the role depends on how experienced they are, because they're there to learn. And if they're very experienced, then they're doing everything. If they're a little less experienced, the experienced JA helps out in the background.
Gotcha. Awesome. We also had a question in chat for you. Do you get a chance to meet again with the team that you have already interviewed?
No, we in an in-person event, the answer to that would be yes, because you go back and you interview in the pits, and you may or may not. But for the remote events, we do one set of interviews, and then we send different judges to see different teams, so that we have it would be at least 4 judges having seen any one team. So you have multiple people's opinion and their view of how the team did with respect to the awards. So you don't usually get to see a team twice, not for remote events.
Gotcha. Thank you. And Kate, not the same question, but what are some ways that students who are like under 18 can participate in remote events?
Oh, I've got the answer. Okay, so students under 18, you have to make sure if you're an event organizer that you always have someone accompany them. But really good roles for someone if you are under 18 is there are in a meeting like Zoom or whatever virtual platform, everyone always needs help moving from room to room. So that is a really common role that is needed. And the other thing is helping with judging with timers. So helping the timers in the judging room. So that's an interesting role if you think one day you want to judge when you're qualified. And then the third really cool role, which is more you get to talk and do things, is game announcer and an MC. So it depends on the actual event that's running. But those are all roles that you don't have an age restriction for.
That's awesome. Thank you. And I'm just going to read out loud some of the questions from chat just so that they're on the recording. How old do you need to become a volunteer? Well, Kate did answer this. First, the key roles are 21, but you can start volunteering as 13, I believe you said. Yep. And there's a wide range of roles that you can do. Next question we had was, how many days and what days do FDC events run? So like an in-person event would be 1 day. Remote events are a little bit different. There are 3 parts to the FTC remote events. There's judging, there's qualification matches, and there's the team showcase. The judging, most of our events have judging on one single day, which is on a Saturday. Then teams have they have like 6 days, approximately a week, to submit their official qualification scores. And then there's the team showcase, which happens approximately a week after the judging date. And at the team showcase, that's where we celebrate the teams that have competed at that event, and we show videos of the teams competing to create a competition environment. And of course, we hand out awards. And so the judging and the team showcase usually happen on the weekend. And those are the main 2 like volunteer days, like volunteer heavy days. And yeah, that seems to be all the questions that we have. I'm going to repost the link to the Google form. So if you are interested in any of the roles that we talked about today, please feel free to fill out this form. If you know someone who might be interested in one of these roles, either now or in the future, please feel free to send them this form to fill out as well. One thing that I just wanted to note, that if you're familiar with FLL, First LEGO League, you might know that like a lot of the times the tournaments like hold their own. The tournament directors are FRC teams, and they pull volunteers from their immediate community. And so one way of getting involved is to contact those tournaments directly. Another way, especially if you don't know what tournaments are around you, you don't know any other FRC teams, fill out this form and we will put you in contact with the people that can give you a spot to volunteer at. And once this video is going to be posted on our YouTube, on the First Canada YouTube channel, and this form is going to be in the description box, so you can fill it out at any time. Yes, if you can fill out the form again if you need to. That's perfectly fine. Awesome. So does anyone have any other questions for our amazing key volunteers or myself? Also, you can feel free to email me at any time if you're interested in specific roles or want to find out more. My email is on the First Canada website under staff. So that is public. So you can always contact me and I can put you in contact with one of the key role leads that you want to talk to. Right. If there are no questions, we will end this segment. I thank you. Oh, not yet. Yeah, 1 second. We will have another one of these sessions a little closer to provincials for us to talk about different volunteer opportunities there. Like Mickey alluded to a little earlier, that we might be doing an in-person provincials. That still is TBD, and that means that there's a whole new slew of volunteer opportunities for that. So we will go more into detail on that specifically if and when that is confirmed, but fingers crossed. What day is the sorry, there was one more question from chat. What day would in-person be run on? So typically, I think events would be on Saturdays. That is a robot. That is a hat. That is a very cool judge hat. There's a triangle. There's a propeller. There's a square. Whoa, that's really cool. Oh, and there's the circle. Got it. I see it now. That's a really cool hat, Randall. Oh, and from Steamworks. See, this makes sense now. That's really awesome. Oh, just to confirm that I actually answered that question in one sentence. In-person events will typically happen on a Saturday. There are probably going to be some leeway where some events happen on Sundays, just because we're also, the FTC season runs parallel with the FLL season, and a lot of FLL events are on Saturdays, so we might have to move around dates. We'll see. That's a problem for next year to manage both. Any other questions? All right. I will take that as a no, and I want to thank all our key volunteers for being here today and for everyone for joining. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa.
Bye.